The year is 1905. The air over Lake Superior, vast and unforgiving, smelled of wet iron ore and coming snow. For Captain Elias Vance, the scent was a second language. He stood on the bridge of the SS Ironclad, a gargantuan 500-foot-long whaleback freighter, one of the iron ducks that dominated the inland seas. Below him, the ironclad churned through the gray-green water, carrying 10,000 tons of taconite, the lifeblood of America's industrial boom, mined from the Mesabi Range and destined for the steel mills of Pittsburgh. Vance was navigating the most treacherous stretch of the Great Lakes shipping lane, a liquid highway that moved more tonnage annually than the Suez and Panama canals combined. But this night, the threat wasn't a gale or a rogue wave. It was silence, absolute, unnatural silence from the wireless. The ironclad was part of a fleet, 3 miles astern of the SS Plymouth and 3 miles ahead of the SS Milwaukee. All three were state-of-the-art, radio-equipped vessels. Yet for the last hour, every attempt to contact the Plymouth had failed. Vance's wireless operator, a nervous young man named Miller, kept tapping the key, his face pale under the electric lamp. "Sir," Miller whispered, his voice thin, "still nothing from the Plymouth. And Captain, I swear, I think I'm picking up a distress signal, faint, almost underwater. It's not code, it's just a continuous low-frequency hum, like a grinding sound." Vance grabbed his binoculars and scanned the black horizon where the Plymouth should have been a distant speck of light. Nothing. He felt a cold dread, the kind that had nothing to do with the freezing mist. The Plymouth was a monster of a ship, built to withstand anything the lakes could throw at her. "Hold that position, Miller. Maintain speed. I'm going below to check the latest chart correction," Vance commanded, his voice steady despite the tremor in his gut. As he turned to leave the bridge, a massive, grinding shudder ripped through the ironclad. It wasn't the impact of a collision. It felt like the very spine of the ship had been suddenly twisted. Lights flickered and died. A deep, guttural sound like a mountain splitting echoed from the hold. Vance stumbled back, grabbing the railing. Below deck, the grinding noise intensified. It was the sound of tons of iron ore shifting, but with a terrifying, rhythmic clank, clank, clank that sounded almost mechanical. "What in God's name was that?" Miller cried out. Before Vance could answer, the ship's massive steam whistle let out a single piercing blast, not a signal, but the sound of escaping high-pressure steam. Then all noise ceased. The SS Ironclad, 500 feet of American industrial might, had stopped dead in the water. The only sound was the sloshing of Lake Superior, and that impossible, rhythmic clank, 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 coming from somewhere deep in the black water. Elias Vance had been sailing the Great Lakes for 30 years. He knew the cost of every storm, the location of every reef. But what he was witnessing defied his lifetime of experience. He was floating in the middle of a blank canvas of water, and within a 6-mile radius, 2 gigantic, modern steamships had simply vanished. This was the beginning of the Great Lakes' most inexplicable maritime mystery, a vanishing act that would expose a decades-long secret history of industrial espionage, engineering genius, and the covert American effort to control the global supply of the world's most valuable metal, nickel. Chapter 1. The Veins of Industry and the Price of Iron. To understand the Ghost Fleet, one must first understand the ground beneath it, the geology that made the American Midwest the world's economic engine. This story is not just of ships, but of tectonic plates, economic warfare, and a forgotten mineral rush. In the late 19th century, America ran on steel. and steel ran on iron ore. The Great Lakes, Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario were not just bodies of water. They were a vast 95,000 square mile transportation system, a watery conveyor belt linking the ore-rich Mesabi Range in Minnesota to the blast furnaces of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. The fact: by 1900, the Mesabi Range alone was supplying over 50% of the United States iron ore. The scale of the operation was staggering. A new ship was launched every 10 days to handle the volume. These behemoths of the lakes, the Lakers, were the largest freshwater vessels in the world, specialized only in carrying bulk cargo, coal, grain, and above all, iron ore. The movement of this ore was the largest continuous bulk transport operation in history, the undisputed foundation of the Second Industrial Revolution. The shipping magnates, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the powerful U.S. Steel Corporation treated the lakes as their private highway. They built fleets of identical, brutally efficient ships, all tied into an iron fist of a monopoly. But for all their power, they could not control the elements. The statistics of death. The Great Lakes are a burial ground. Historically, they have claimed the lives of over 30,000 sailors and swallowed an estimated 6,000 vessels. They are shallow, tempestuous, and subject to witch of November gales, sudden, violent storms that can sink a ship faster than a hurricane. But the disappearances of the Plymouth and the Ironclad, and later 3 others in a horrifyingly short sequence, were different. They did not vanish in a storm. They disappeared in calm weather, without a single distress call, beyond Miller's faint, non-coded hum, and without leaving behind the typical debris field of a shipwreck. The first clue: a mezzle that defied physics. Captain Elias Vance, pulled from the disabled Ironclad by a passing tugboat and forced to give his account to the U.S. Steamboat Inspection Service, was one of the last witnesses to the Plymouth's existence. His story of the grinding clank and the sudden spine-shattering shudder was dismissed as the ravings of a man suffering from shock. But a young, ambitious naval architect from the Cleveland Shipbuilding Company, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, read Vance's account in the papers and didn't dismiss it. She saw a terrifying engineering possibility. Ellie Hayes was a complete anomaly in the industry, one of the first women to earn a Ph.D. in naval engineering in the U.S., and she had an obsession. Her thesis was on ferro-nickel alloys, specifically the properties of Invar, a revolutionary alloy of steel and nickel that exhibited near-zero thermal expansion. This metal could maintain its structural integrity in extreme temperature shifts, an engineering dream. The secret ingredient. The truth, often overlooked in the rush for iron, was that nickel was the real prize. The addition of just a few percentage points of nickel transformed ordinary steel into armor plating, high-speed rail, and precision instrument parts. By 1905, the world's navies were in an arms race, and the demand for nickel-steel armor was insatiable. The price of nickel was artificially high, controlled almost entirely by a secretive cartel known as the International Nickel Company, INCO, which held a near monopoly on the vast Sudbury Basin deposits in Canada. Ellie's theory was simple, audacious, and bordered on the impossible. The missing ships were not sinking due to natural causes. They were being destroyed by an unnatural, targeted force designed not to blast, but to surgically destabilize a ship's structure by exploiting the specific thermal and magnetic properties of nickel steel. She went to Duluth, determined to trace the path of the nickel ore from the mine to the Ghost Fleet. stepping onto the docks just as the third and largest vessel, the SS Superior Dream, was due to load its cargo. What she found was a dock foreman who did not fear the lakes, but the men in black tin hats, a shadowy group of enforcers who seemed to answer to no government, only to the price of metal. The hook line, internal thought. The only thing more valuable than gold in the 20th century was the metal that made the gold-chasing armies invincible: nickel. And someone was willing to sink entire fleets to keep that secret buried at the bottom of the lakes.